to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Officially called this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Take a roll call, please.
Covert.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Lees.
Here.
Young.
Here.
Crowner.
Okay. On our agenda, I would like you to remove item number 4 from the consent agenda. We will consider that at a later date. And I'm also asking you to remove from the agenda itself item number 8. Again, another one that we will consider at another time.
Motion to approve is amended. Second. Support.
Motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, so entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 3 and number 5.
So moved. Support.
Motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll go into our staff reports. Greg?
Just a couple things tonight, Your Honor. Had a nice conversation with Amy O'Brien with the Chamber this afternoon. Superintendent and I are getting together next week as well. Budget is going out hopefully this week. Budget memos are ready, and Angie's putting together spreadsheets for the departments. So we're going to start working on that. We also are conducting evals, and then just to confirm, per the email, we'll do the 11th and then meet on the 20th at like 5:15 and then go to the council. So dates seem like they worked for everybody.
What's that now?
Submitting the evaluations on the 11th and then meeting on the 20th.
Well, I'll be,
Like the
be more than
consensus?
happy to get that valuation in.
Yeah, you were late last year. I had to pull your teeth to get it. That's all, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Chase?
We're started jetting sewers. We have a list of any that have caused problems with people in the past, and if we know we're going to be in that area, we put on door knockers so that they're aware a day or two in advance. Just waiting on some quotes for the pool boiler. Something that we probably should look forward to, or look to, being that it's going to be 2 or 3 months out after you decide on it. So something we need to look to before this summer. And then the tree limbs, trimming around town. The letters have been coming to the mailbox starting today. We were try to been fair with everyone all the way around. I've met with about 25 to 30 people this afternoon, and most of them, once I got there and explained it to them, 90% of them took it really well. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more to come. So
About how many of those did you send out?
I think there's 200,
238.
238.
and that's for sidewalks and limbs over the road, etc. And I think Mark's talked to 7 people this afternoon, and like I said, I've talked to about 25 to 30 so far. So
Yeah. Well, I know we're trying to be fair with this. I got one also, so I think it's...
some people feel targeted at first until you explain that it was through the whole town. So no one's getting targeted.
Got one too, Ron.
Yeah.
I thought Kitty did a pretty good job of doing the explanation sheet and putting the information together for the public in the future. It's a good way to educate as well at the same time for safety reasons, etc. We did have a bus that ran into a limb last year, was it?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
It was last year. So I mean, it's it's for obviously for public safety vehicles as well. But there was a bus last year, for example, that got hit a limb. Excuse me.
All right, anything else? If not, I'll go ahead and go to Jesse.
A couple things. We're doing Shop with a Cop again this year. Matt Rinker started that 10 years ago plus. We go around with kids from each school district and spend the morning with them, and then in the afternoon we take the kids shopping over to Walmart, and sometimes we go to Dick's. It just depends what organization is going to work with us. Again, they're always asking for donations, so if you see an officer out and about, would like to donate some money to them, and then they'll get it to me, and then I'll get it to Matt Rinker. He's the chairperson for the Shop with a Cop here in Des Moines County. We typically do about 18 kids a year, third graders.
Almost 30.
So it just depends what the schools give us and what we work with. So it's a good turnout. Officers enjoy it. So that's Shop with a Cop. That's held in December every year. So we'll be doing it again there on a Saturday in December. And then Halloween went well. We had quite a few kids at the fire department, and I was downtown at the Safe Trick or Treat down at the auditorium, and I think we had about 800 kids go through down there. So it was a very popular spot again this year. So that's all I have for tonight.
All right, thank you. Finance?
Just like Greg said, started the budget process. We got the audit finalized, and Sarah's here tonight to go over that. Maggie will be hopping on shortly to go over the TIF, and then we have the AFR due, and the TIF due, and the urban renewal due, so just super busy.
Okay, thank you. Clerk? Nope, all right. We'll go into council. Melanie?
Thanks, Ron. Just a couple quick shout-outs. Want to congratulate Schluter's on their 10-year anniversary. They had a nice little open house last week. And Walmart also had a really nice grand reopening that Johnny and Jesse and his crew were out there. It was just real nice to have that strong corporation in our community, and they did a nice job recognizing their employees and also giving back to the community that day to 3 different organizations they made contributions to. So good job, Walmart, and the store looks good. And good job, guys, everybody in the ribbon cutting we did last week, or was it 2 weeks ago almost now? We got the trail ribbon cutting, good turnout for that, and we got some good publicity for it. And so all good fun things going on in our community, and a fun thing I got to do yesterday is talk to a woman who actually is living over in the Nexus Apartments behind Becker Plaza, and it's a chance for me to ask her how does she like it, and said it's wonderful, it's great, her and her teenage son enjoy it, it's quiet, just really glad to have that housing opportunity in our community. So some good positive things going on that we don't want to forget. And finally want to thank Ragbri for their contribution to the West Burlington Community School and their work in parking last summer in our community. Ragbri made a $7,000 contribution to the school. So that's one way we get money and recognition back to our community. Well, that's all I got. Thanks.
Okay. Therese?
Just echoing back on Melanie. Ditto and ditto and ditto. And ditto.
John?
Well, another ditto, but I'll expand a little bit on it. The Walmart grand opening was really kind of awesome. I mean, the fire truck was out there with the big arrow, and it looked brand new out there. It's been really kept nice. There was vendors. There was just a lot going on for a good celebration, for a big reinvestment in the city. So, and I thought it was pretty clever or pretty nice that on the counter where you walk in above the food, it said West Burlington up there in great big letters, and it was pretty cool. I mean, just made it hometown type thing. And the trail was a good meeting for the trail, the ribbon cutting. So getting things done a little bit. I did get asked on the trail why it cost $1.5 million, and I guess I just like to let people know most of that cost was the bridge. You know, we had a bridge that we had to go across that cost most of that money. So that they were asking I've had a couple people ask why it costs so much.
Yeah.
That's about it for me.
Okay,
No, Your Honor, I have nothing.
all right. I just want to thank the Public Works Department for the work that they did with our prairie restoration area that we have in Pat Klein Park. And I know that they were working all after the students were all gone. You worked ahead of that.
Kind of gave up early.
Yeah, so I do appreciate the work, and I know the city will too, so thank you. And with that, I'll move on. We see no citizen inquiries at this point. I'll ask for new business, which I think is a presentation of the audit report.
We have Sarah Bonsack with us tonight. Bonsack and Fromo, and Sarah and her team worked on the audit with the staff this year, so please, come on up. Yes, please.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I think I've been remote for the last couple of years, so I wanted to come to the meeting tonight, and I appreciate you letting me join you. I'm going to talk mainly from the presentation that we handed out tonight, and that was also in your packet. But if you have any questions on the bound document, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. The first page of the presentation is the results of the audit. This year, we were required to do 2 different types of audits. In some years, when you have spent over $750,000 in federal dollars, we're required to do another audit, which is referred to as a single audit. We were not required to do that audit this year. The financial statement audit, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest form of opinion that you can receive. There is an emphasis of a matter paragraph within that audit report because you are on a cash basis of accounting. The second type of audit we do is a government auditing standards audit, and that purpose of that audit is to look at your internal control system, so your checks and your balances within the city, and to test them to make sure that they're functioning as designed. And as you've been with me for a couple of years, it's been a process, and so your team continues to work on those issues that we've identified in the past. They were originally reported as material weaknesses, which is kind of the most severe type of finding that you can have. But they have been, some of them have been dropped down to what's referred to as a control deficiency, which means that there's compensating controls around those type of issues so that the city now has, if you will, an external check and balance around those issues. And a couple are still reported as significant deficiencies. Those are in the back of this bound document is where they're reported. But the city has made progress on those as well. So they continue to put different controls in place to help alleviate the conditions. Questions on the kind of the report card of the audit? If not, I was just going to talk about your receipts and disbursements quickly. On page 3 of the presentation is your governmental funds receipts. This year, your total revenue was $4,837,000. This is just your governmental funds. It doesn't include your enterprise type funds. Compared to 2023, which was $5 million. So your total receipts decreased about 3.3% or $163,000. The receipts decreased in the current year were offset by an increase in intergovernmental grant revenue. Or I'm sorry, TIF receipts decreased this year, which is the major reason for the decrease. But that was offset by an increase in your intergovernmental revenue, which was primarily the Gear Avenue Trail and funding for the Mount Pleasant Phase 2 project this year. The next graph looks at your expenditures or your disbursements. For your governmental funds, your total disbursements for 2024 were $6,162,000 compared to 2023, which was $5,067,000. So it's about a $1.1 million increase from the prior year. This is primarily due to planned spending on capital projects. You had about $1.7 million, which was primarily your Gear Avenue Trail and work that had started on the Mount Pleasant Phase 2 project. This was offset by a decrease in public safety. In the prior year, there was the purchase of the fire truck and fire equipment, some police vehicles and police equipment, which was approximately $800,000 that was expended last year. And during the year, the city paid $697,000 of principal and interest on your general obligation bonds, and you have an outstanding balance of about $2.2 million at this point. Okay, and then the last page is looking at your water and sewer funds between the 2 years. Your business type activity receipts for the year was about $3.6 million compared to about $5.4 million in the prior year. In 2023, the city had proceeds from water and revenue bonds of about $2.5 million. In 2024, the proceeds were about $331,000. So that's the main reason for your decrease in your revenues. Your total outstanding bonds for your enterprise activities are about $13.1 million. The cash balance of the enterprise funds actually decreased this year, excuse me, by $655,000. But that's because you had those planned capital spending of that bond proceeds you took in the year before. And those capital expenditures this year were about $851,000. So that's the main reason for the decrease. Any questions on the audit? I'm here for several days. We bring a fairly large team and kind of put your staff through a pretty rigorous process, and I really appreciate their readiness for us when we come out, and their ability to help us get it done.
And I mentioned it before in last year, but what I appreciate is the willingness of the Ben and to work with staff and work through questions that come up during the process. It's a great educational experience going through the audit, and Sarah and her team do an excellent job of working with our team and answering those questions, providing additional information and support. So it's an excellent service that's provided by their firm, so we appreciate it.
And Sarah, maybe you've already said it, but it seems from what you've said over the last couple of years, you're seeing a proficiency increase throughout our staff and how things happen. Or don't let me put words back in your mouth.
I totally agree.
Okay.
That things are more prepared. When they have a question, they call, and I do appreciate that. It's so much easier to answer question as they come up instead of waiting till the end of the year. And yes, I think, the issues of the internal control issues, we've continued to talk through those and try and put things in place to make it better, to more perfect the system.
Along with continued education and training, and TIF is an ongoing experience for everybody involved.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in. It's nice to see you in person. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thanks.
Okay, and next item is our online, right, TIF presentation from Spear
Thank you.
Hi there, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, this is Maggie Berger with Spear Financial, and I appreciate you allowing me to participate via a virtual meeting. I am out of the area and attending a couple of virtual meetings this evening, so thank you. I believe in your packets you've been provided our colorful sheets. This is that time of the year where we start talking about TIF. So just a quick recap of those sheets. The obligation debt is what you're looking at on the red pages. We tell you the type of debt that was issued, the amount that was issued. I remind you the TIC on those pages up there in that header box. That's the true interest cost or the true interest rate. And so your TIC, on the last bonds that you issued were in 2022. That was a 2.2532% interest rate. Interest rates are a little bit higher. That's a question we're getting asked a lot right now. They're probably somewhere in the 3.75 range to maybe the 4.25% range. But all these bonds that you have outstanding, they are fixed, and that is what the interest rate will remain. Your first two bonds in this page are callable. That just means that if interest rates were lower, you could refinance. They are not. You could pay these bonds down in whole or in part, but at this point in time, cities are also having conversations about maintaining those bond issues because in their accounts, they're able to get more interest off of the cash and reinvestment rates than the 2% that you're paying on those debts. We give you on this page the total principal and interest of the GO debt. You're paying some of your GO debt with TIF revenue. You're paying some of your GO debt with local option sales tax. And then the very far column is the amount that you're levying in the debt service, which is a very similar number to itself every year from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 32. We go on to our orange pages, and this is where we outline the revenue debt that is outstanding to the city. You do have a water revenue debt from 2008, but also from 2021, kind of flanking each end there. And then 2017 and 2020, those were sewer revenue debts. The biggest takeaway here is that the fall zeros in it. That number just means that you cannot levy any property taxes for any revenue-based debt. The revenue-based debt has to be paid with revenues of the system, and the revenues of the system are checked on an annual basis to make sure that they're keeping up with not only the operations and maintenance costs of the system, but also making sure that the debt payment. So from time to time, you may see a need to increase the water and the sewer rates, and part of that is, maybe the expenses have gone up as a possibility that revenues have gone down slightly, but that's all in accordance with bond resolutions that were signed when these issues were done. The city just has one rebate obligation outstanding. That is for the Campus Community Developers LLC, Blackhawk Tower. So that rebate goes out for 3 more years. You're certifying debt this year for fiscal year 26 already, and that's out there till fiscal 28. You also in 2025, we're giving Greater Burlington Partnership some support there of $5,000.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep, so go ahead, sorry.
I just had to switch pages, that's all.
Oh, okay, no worries. So that Greater Burlington Partnership, it may be something that you do regularly or from time to time, but that's where we would add this in as kind of a distribution for anything like that. Your total annually appropriated debt certification for fiscal year 26 in that far right column is $66,818. If we switch to the next page, the yellow section, this is where we outline that you're paying some of the 2017 general obligation bonds with TIF revenues. The portion that general obligation debt is only outstanding for 3 more years till 28. The portion till 2027. And so again, there is, this is the amount that we're using out of TIF revenues to pay that debt. Page 2 of this yellow section also indicates that you still have 1 more year in 25 of a redevelopment. It was a street shop lot at 515 Glasgow. So we've got that in there. We add in those TIF rebates from that purple column. Your total overall TIF askings are approximately, we say $656,218 to certify for the general obligation debts and the rebate agreements. There may be some interfund loans that you've entered into that are not showing up here from time to time as you're doing this, projects just within the city limits and within those TIF areas there as well. If we go to our green pages, we're getting close to the end. We go this is where we talk about debt capacity and the amount of debt capacity that you as a city have that you could borrow against. We're going to look at column number 2 and we're going to read straight down. The city of West Burlington has 100% or an actual valuation amount of $574,011,000. Your debt capacity, which is 5% of that number, is about $28 million. If you look from column 2 to column 1 and both of those numbers that I just gave you, there's a pretty significant increase in valuation. It's about 10%. You're seeing that also in that debt capacity number. If you'll all remember back about 18 months ago, you got a letter from the county that said, you haven't really done anything to your property, but we are going to revalue all of the properties and we're going to increase the valuation, maybe on your home, on your business, etc. That valuation resulted in about a 10% increase in valuation. That is not a common number that that you would see from year to year. We know that the January 1st, 24 valuations were very flat. We anticipate that January 1st, 25 valuations will be very flat, really just growth of new businesses, new commercial, new industry, things like that. But going back to column number 2 and looking at that $28 million number, that's the total amount of debt you could have outstanding at one time. You have $2.2 million of GO debt, about $71,000 of rebate agreements. You're going to pay back $614,000 of GO debt this year. So that's still leaving you with about $27 million dollars of debt capacity, about 94%. Very, very healthy number. You really have a low debt burden compared to your valuation. And we always tell most overseas you do more than 80% of your total debt if you can avoid it. So if we take a 20% contingency off there just to kind of have as a cushion in the background, you still have debt capacity of about $21 million. I'm definitely not telling you to go borrow $21 million or borrow any of that, because I mean the biggest takeaway here is, you have the capacity to borrow for projects that might be upcoming, things like that. But we also have to remember that we don't want, to borrow for something that we can't pay back. So that's where the conversation around new projects that need to be borrowed for is, what's the plan to pay them back? How many years is it going to take us back? Are we going to use funds that come in from sources like road use or local option, or are we going to levy those in the debt service or TIF? So that, I feel confident that you have enough debt capacity for future projects, but the revenue debt, remember, does not count against debt capacity. So this is just your obligation debt that we have to show on these pages. And then our very last section is our blue section, and this is where we talk about TIF that has grown, the valuation that has grown in your TIF district from the time that your TIF districts started back, way back when. In column number 2, again, reading down, you've had $329 million of growth in commercial value. You've had about $6.6 million of industrial value growth. The biggest one here then for residential is about $97 million of growth. That's a significant number over the $78 million. Couple of reasons. You have lots of homes in your community, so they all were affected by that revaluation. But we also are putting any kind of apartment buildings now into that residential number, where those apartment buildings used to be classified under multi-family classification. That has now merged, and so now we're saying that we could fall into just that classification of residential. Based on the valuation, you're generating about $9 million in TIF receipts on an annual basis. You are using approximately $600,000 to pay GO debt, $71,000 to pay some TIF rebates, and about $9,000 to pay some that one interfund loan that still remains out there. You're not claiming about $8.8 million, and we're not telling you to go claim this for for every dollar that you collect more than you collected last year, if there's not the growth to offset that, you could be hurting the general fund taxable valuation, and we definitely don't want that to be the case. But what it just means is, if we have a year where we need to claim some extra TIF dollars, we've got some fluctuation and some ability to do that because you're not using all of the TIF dollars. Every dollar that you do not use, that growth back into your budget goes back into your school district and back into your county's budget. So that's an important step. You're using TIF the exact way that the state of Iowa wants you to use TIF, to have obligations outstanding that promote economic development within your communities, and yet you're paying those obligations back with the TIF receipts. That's a lot of information. Are there any questions for me on any of those pages?
So did I hear you say that we're getting in more than what we're spending?
Yeah, you're not taking in more than what you're spending, because you're really only asking for what your annual obligation amounts are, but you're generating. Your TIF district is generating more money than what you're truly asking for. That's pretty common. I would just zooming into another meeting and add that same conversation that, your TIF district from inception generates TIF dollars and you're asking for, but you really can't go ask for those TIF dollars because you don't have the obligations to back up why you'd be asking for more TIF dollars on an annual basis.
So once again, how much more extra is that?
It's down there in that unclaimed TIF dollars of about $8,875,000.
And if we use that money, that takes money away from the county and the school district, is that correct?
It would take money away from the city, the county, and the school district. It would also take money out of your budget, because remember, TIF can only be used for economic development, so we can't really use it, to run the city government. Maybe we can justify small amounts, to justify some partial employment or some economic development with, again, the Greater Burlington, partnership, et cetera. But you can't just use TIF money to run operations of the city. The TIF money really has to be used for those economic development projects like growth. It can only be spent in TIF areas, things like that.
Does it have to be growth, though, or can it be for improvement?
So it could be for improvement, and the improvement that it can be for is for public infrastructure improvement. Now, with that being said, maybe there's a road that you're going to do, and that road really can't probably be through like a residential neighborhood. It probably needs to be like a main corridor type road if you're borrowing money for that. Again, you have to create the obligation. It's not just something that we can go say, well, we're going to ask for these dollars and spend it on this road. We've got to create an obligation to be able to ask for that. That's what the state code says and allows for. Mm-hmm. So, if you've got a corridor project where it's a major thoroughfare, or it's a road that has a lot of commercial businesses, a lot of industry on it, absolutely, those are things that we can look at adding to your urban renewal plan, borrowing money to upgrade. That road does have to sit in your TIF area. Again, TIF dollars go hand in hand with rebate agreements. A rebate agreement is a great way to give an incentive to a developer. The developer says, we're going to build something. That something is going to pay new taxes that nobody's ever collected before. And because of those new tax collections, and maybe some new jobs to the community, whatever, we're going to rebate back a portion of those new taxes to you for a set number of years and up to a set number of dollars. I like rebate agreements because why? Rebate agreements mean you don't have to give them anything until they've built that new something and it's paid new taxes.
So I guess where I'm headed with this is, so if you had an area of town that, let's just say it didn't have sewer, and you wanted to put sewer in there, could you use that? Could you use this money for that?
Yeah, I have to be that. First of all, the question that you always have to ask is that area of town in the TIF district? If that area of town is not in the TIF district, then I think you have to amend it to get it into the TIF district, if that's possible, or just say, no, we can't use it. If the sewer that you're talking about running is all residential, then I would say you've got to probably set aside low to moderate income dollars for that residential if those homes if all the homes in that area are not meeting the low to moderate income, guidelines and specifications. Anytime you spend TIF to promote housing, and I would say that if it's an area of town that, is needing sewer, if that's an area that's only going to be commercial, there's no LMI requirement. But if that area of town that needs sewer either already has houses or you're putting the sewer in to promote new housing, then absolutely you can take money out of the TIF, but you're also going to need to set aside money. You're going to be limited on what you can take out because housing costs or properties that are improved upon for housing purposes require a low to moderate income set aside in the state of Iowa.
That's a total different story if it's a whole new development though, right?
It is. If it's a whole new development and the developer, again, we talk about this, the developer may come in and the best way, in my opinion, for developers is they come in, they say, we're going to put in the water, the street, the sewer. It's going to cost this much. And when we build the houses or people build the houses and they pay new taxes on their houses, you, the city, are going to rebate us back that money. That's your safest way, right? Because you're not putting in the infrastructure. If you put in the infrastructure yourself, again, your goal is that there's new houses that come out, right? Because your goal is to generate new dollars to be able to collect those tip dollars and pay back that obligation. You definitely wouldn't want to go in and not have, some kind of startup plan as to when those houses may build out, because it could be that you potentially are grabbing TIF receipts that you've never grabbed before. And by doing that, if there's not growth in the other parts of the TIF district, you could be hurting your own general fund because you're grabbing more receipts than your city is growing at, right? And in that situation, if there's no new houses to offset and to improve the growth in your area, then that could hurt your general fund, your taxable valuation, a little bit in your general fund each and every year. So we have to be very careful that we don't just go in and put infrastructure into an area, but there's definitely not a plan that appears to be moving forward in the next 2 to 3 years for building of homes or businesses.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Where do we see the impact of the changing with our hospital's property valuation and how that's been handled, or how that amount of the property that's taxable has been handled? Where do we see the impact?
Angela, I'm going to ask you if you have any more information on that valuation. I believe we saw that valuation, a slight decrease in that valuation in last year's numbers from the year before. Is that correct?
Yeah,
We'll see about a $40 million decrease this year in total valuation based on the lawsuit. Last year, we collected additional TIF to offset the lost TIF revenue that we were going to receive from the hospital project. And Angie's taking a look at it again this year, so we can determine if we need to collect any additional TIF to offset from the lost valuation at the hospital. And then going forward, the county will distribute our TIF, our debt, our certified debt. They'll distribute it amongst all of the districts that we have. It will not be coming just out of, for example, one district like the hospital. So.
Yeah. They'll be pulling TIF revenues out of all of your different districts to sort of make up for what that loss, potentially looks like.
Okay. I guess, Maggie, I was asked on the valuation part of your information. It doesn't show up
We don't have our
on.
values yet, but it's about a $40 million
the valuation from last year is significantly higher because they hadn't done the litigation. And
Okay.
So we couldn't
Couldn't plan for it, you couldn't reflect it.
determine an exact amount.
Okay.
I mean,
212 million, I think,
ran
is
the numbers
included.
where, it had been previously because it should have stayed, previous to
Yeah.
what it was before.
Yeah. And it could be a timing issue where they may have decreased the valuation slightly as of January 1st of 2024. And then the column number 3 on the green pages, where you're going to see that reflected in the future is on the green pages. I do want to say this. It could have been reflected partially in the 1/123 number, because honestly, you're showing about a 10% growth in column number 2, where some cities are showing a 15 to a 25% growth. So the reevaluation of all the properties as of 2023, there could have been more growth in your valuation, but potentially, if they were still working on that or starting to decrease the valuation of that hospital and maybe not doing it over a 1-year period, it potentially could be reflected there. And I just say that because, again, a fair amount of our cities are seeing anywhere between that 12 and, like I said, 15 to 20%. And with you only showing a 10%, I don't kind of not wonder that maybe some of that is reflected in that valuation.
So so I'm just waiting for the big slap, when it happens, but maybe it's already absorbed in there.
I think we played a little bit of that the year before.
What Angie was talking about earlier, Angie backed out the increase in value that was included in our total valuation. So over $200 million in valuation in lieu of 28 or 40 million, I can't, off the top of my head, in valuation. So Angie backed that out so that we were using what we were going to actually, our best guess of what we were going to actually receive in property taxes. What we didn't receive were the TIF dollars off of that property, and which is why we increased the amount that of debt we certified last year to account for that, to cover that, and then there'll probably be another catch-up provision this year, now that we have, I guess, a better number. And then during the budget process, you'll see, that's where you'll see once we get our 100% valuations and our assessed valuations in December, we'll see exactly where where our numbers lie and what we're going to have to deal with.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, that was a great explanation, Greg. Thank you. Any other questions for me?
I think everybody's had their questions answered, so.
All right, well, thank you again for letting me attend virtually. I hope to see you in the future here in person. But I apologize. It's just been a crazy few weeks with getting all these TIP reports out, and I just was not able to get there.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thanks, Maggie.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Item number 3 is considering a resolution. Brad's got that under control, so. Our third item under here is considering a resolution approving an annual appropriations payment to campus community developers for Black Hawk Tower, $56,662. Any discussion? I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on this?
This is what we pay every year.
Every year.
This year, it went down to just the Black Hawk Tower. We did the rebate agreement to the falls with the Millennium Tower, so.
The reason we do these rebate agreements every year is so that we don't have to count the entire amount of the obligation against our debt limit. We only count the amount that's appropriated on an annual basis. So if you have a $50 million TIF rebate, but you're only rebating $1 million a year, you only have to count $1 million of that $50 million against your total debt.
Okay.
Didn't know that.
Call for a roll call vote?
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Covert.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll go to number 4. We're considering a resolution approving the annual appropriations Greater Burlington Partnership for $5,000.
Motion to approve. Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, call for a roll call.
Lees,
Aye.
Young,
Aye.
Covert,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Consider a resolution authorizing an internal advance of funds for legal fees associated with the urban renewal projects.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion on this?
Explain
These
that
are
a
all
little.
the
This is a
same.
transfer, right? This is just transfer from,
Well, each one of these is grading debt, which allows Angie to collect, or to report and collect that debt for the coming year. And again, the reason we do it annually is so we only have to count that portion against our debt limit.
call for a roll call.
Young,
Aye.
Covert,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 6, consider a resolution appointing a Public Works Director.
So moved. Support.
Motion and support.
Should we discuss this? No.
Can I ask a question? Chase, how's it going?
Pretty good so far, I think. Learning a lot. Just how to handle every situation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What's surprised you the most about the last 3 months? Right.
I don't know. You're always at work. I mean, even when you're not, your phone's next to you, so that's something I got used to, but everything else is going pretty good, so.
So Chase, I don't want you to get a big head or anything, but seriously, I've heard nothing but good. Okay, so don't take that too far to, but still walk down here with us. But, yeah, I've heard good things.
So, thank you.
Call for a roll call.
I didn't get the motion. Who did the motion in the second?
I did. Treese motion,
and
John second.
I did.
Don second, yeah.
Sorry. Covert,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lees,
Aye.
Young.
Aye.
Okay.
Congratulations, Chase.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations. Motion carried. Number 7, consider adopting guidelines for the installation of small cell wireless technology.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Support.
Motion support. Any discussion on this?
So, you've had, over a period of time, you've had updates. We have a company that's looking to install a small cell within West Burlington, and we adopted the Iowa Code fee structure. What we don't really have are guidelines, and these guidelines are ones that a number of communities have adopted. They're essentially, they almost adopted them verbatim. They were an excellent example, and simply have the requirements for a company coming in to look to site a small cell within your community. And what we're talking about are just, they're going to be undergrounding wire to pole locations. At those pole locations, they'll have a box on the ground that feeds it, and then there'll be a small attachment to the top of the light pole. They may have to add a light pole. We hope that they can utilize existing structures or light poles, so we don't have to add additional ones. They'll be working in the right of way. And so we really haven't had to deal with this before. It's usually cellular towers that we have to deal with. And so these are just simple guidelines for the installation of those within the community.
So Greg, just to clarify, if we have to make the intersection bigger or the road wider and stuff, we're not responsible like we are for the franchise?
And these folks will be working in the right of way, and it's entirely at their cost. This just provides additional guidance that we just have lacking, because we haven't had to deal with small cell. It's becoming more common in communities to improve cell reception. And so, no, they'll be working in the right of way. The undergrounding, the equipment, everything is at their expense. They'll be paying the standard fee, which was $500, upfront, $50 for each additional pole, up to 5 poles, and then there's an additional fee once you hit 5. It's based on state code. So,
But my question was,
we're not responsible for any of those costs.
for future development, or for future moving? Like Alliant now, if they move it one time, 25 years, we're responsible for it.
Correct. No, they're responsible.
That's nothing here, like that.
No, they're
Just wanna
responsible
clarify.
for the utility in the right of way.
Okay, I'll call for a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We'll go to item number 9, considering a resolution setting a public hearing date to consider granting REC a non-exclusive franchise to supply electric energy.
Motion to approve to set the public hearing date for November 20th, 2024 at 6 PM.
Support.
Motion and support. Roll call.
Lees. Aye. Young.
Aye.
Covert.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 10, consider a resolution setting a date of meeting at which it is proposed to approve a development agreement with the Greater Burlington Partnership, including annual appropriation tax increment payments.
Motion to support.
I have a second of any
Motion to approve, sorry.
Support.
motion support.
Sorry.
All right, discussion, Greg?
Yes, so the city council agreed to, over the next 5 years, to provide $6,000 annually, up to $30,000 in support for Chamber for Economic Development. This agreement, which we had in place for the previous 5 years as well, simply creates the debt that allows us to then collect the TIF to make these payments. This is the document that will create the DEF. We won't have to do an internal advance. This document takes its place.
My only comment, Greg, is there's no way in here, it just says $30,000. It's not clear to me that it's, well, we're committing to the 6,000.
On the, it says 6,000 on
Kind of right underneath that.
page 204, page 85 of the count of the under annual appropriations of the second document.
On page 85.
Page 85 of the council packet. Right here.
I must have missed it on page 85. Thank you. Gotcha, I see it. Good.
So I see 6,000.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, call for a roll call vote.
This is a resolution.
Oh, just a resolution, sorry. What?
Young.
Aye.
Covert.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lees. Aye.
Motion carries. That's our last item of business. Seeing no citizen inquiries, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.